Sonic Adventure was the Hedgehog's successful entry into the 3D platforming genre, with a variety of characters, gameplay styles, and levels that feel like the 2D games. We're not talking about the game today. Instead, we're starting a multi-part look at the comic adaptation of the game. Yeah, you heard me, multi-part. Sega wanted to spread the word of Sonic's first 3D game, which is a very big deal, and they had a comic series available produced by Archie. Well, the thing is, the comics had their own continuity at this point, and now, new game continuity will be added into the mix. Most notably, character appearances. They did address this with the main hero and the main villain. Sonic Issue 71 deals with Sonic's transformation from classic to modern. It involved beams and a Super Emerald. I did a review of that issue, so check it out for details. Robotnik's appearance is a little more complicated. It involved a Robotnik from another universe who turned himself into a robot, traveling to Mobius Prime, this comic setting, to take over. The original Robotnik was dead at this point. After the space base he operated on was destroyed with him on it, he transferred his consciousness into a new body, the Eggman one. I'll go ahead and reveal that Tails and Knuckles' changes happen without comment. Amy, though, we'll get to that. If you're watching this review just for the Sonic Adventure stuff, and are confused by some things like characters you're not familiar with, I'll give you the basic gist of it right now. The premise is Sonic and Tails are members of a group called the Freedom Fighters, who operate from their hidden home of Knothole to try and stop the tyranny of Dr. Robotnik and now Dr. Eggman. Knuckles at this time had adventures on the floating island in his own spin-off series, complete with his own cast of characters. I'm mentioning this because they'll be involved in the Sonic Adventure arc in some fashion. Now, the Knuckles book ended at issue 32, just prior to the Sonic Adventure arc. I'll get into something I found related to the Knuckles series later, and that's the basic setup for this world. I'll go into some relevant details as we go along. For example, the ending of issue 78 had Eggman discover something called Chaos and is planning to follow up on this, leading us into the Sonic Adventure tie-in. Before we begin, there's a bit of housekeeping I want to address. A backup story that is unrelated to Sonic Adventure. Around this point in the comic, there have been a series of short stories going on around this time called Tales from the Great War, which told of the titular event and its effects on the world and certain characters. And I want to take a look at it before we head into Sonic Adventure territory. It's like how Pixar films show unrelated shorts before the feature in theaters. Only here, you can skip it. So if you just want to get to the Sonic Adventure stuff, skip to this time right here, and I'll see you there. Otherwise, let's wrap up Tales from the Great War. We start this final part with a flashback of Uncle Chuck starting up his chili dog stand while his sister-in-law Bernie tries to convince him to help Jules. And there's little Sonic teething on his mother's quills. Well, Uncle Chuck is so broken about his brother's fate that he's basically given up. Things are about to get worse for Bernie as she discovers Robotnik giving orders to Jules. For context, this takes place in Uncle Chuck's former lab. Unfortunately, it includes shoving his wife into the roboticizer, something that's haunted both of them to this day. Robotnik spins Bernie's fate to Uncle Chuck as an accident, and with Chuck's current mindset, he believes him. Remember, Robotnik's true nature hasn't been revealed yet. With this added guilt, Uncle Chuck is left to raise Sonic. We flash forward a bit to sometime after Robotnik's coup and Uncle Chuck regaining his free will. He does the same to his brother, thanks to a power ring. He fills Jules in on what Sonic's been up to as they head to Chuck's secret base. They're able to free a few more Robians, including Bernie, so the two lovers are reunited. Jules and Bernie tell Chuck not to reveal their fate to Sonic, and that's where the flashback ends. In the present around the campfire, we learn from Jules that he recalled events thanks to various sources, including Chuck's journals located on discs. Sadly, due to Chuck being recaptured, the disc he has cannot be decoded. So they cannot learn any more, and this is where the saga ends. This portion explains how Uncle Chuck wound up raising Sonic for a time, his chili dog stand, and what happened to Sonic's mom. It also explains where Sonic's parents have been hiding out, and why they held off on revealing themselves to Sonic until he found them in Super Sonic Special number 2. As for Uncle Chuck using power rings to free Jules, I think it was a nod to how Sonic used one to temporarily free Uncle Chuck in the Sad AM episode Sonic Conversion. Otherwise, it makes sense why only a handful of Robians were freed, presumably by the same method. Power rings aren't easy to come by, and they don't want to tip off Robotnik. I'll give the story a 5. It's an alright finish to a piece of Mobian history, and the art is okay. I do find the scene of Bernie being turned into a robot thanks to Jules a bit disturbing. And lastly, the whole thing with the disc. Don't read too much into it. It'll never get followed up. Now that this story is done, on with Sonic Adventure. Our Sonic Adventure tie-in begins with Sonic one night checking in on this guy, Nate Morgan. He's a scientist Sonic and Tails met on their world travels and brought him home. He's also a friend of the King, as you'll see later. Nate tapped into Eggman's network, which mentions something about excavation and the Mystic Ruins. Nate knows what this could mean, so he and Sonic head straight for the King. Again, it's nighttime, and the King is willing to hear them out. Nate informs them that Eggman may have discovered the hidden city of the ancients, and I doubt they're talking about Atlantis. Seems this myth is well known as the King recognizes the significance. Nate confirms that it's no myth. He actually discovered the place long ago during his globetrotting days. Well, that's all the King needs to hear. He orders Sonic and Nate to find this city before Eggman does and warn the population. However, something else is on the King's mind, as Sonic points out. We'll see that something soon. The next morning, Sonic and his robo-parents join the Freedom Fighters for breakfast. Convenient that Sonic's mom mentions each member by name, probably for the sake of the new audience at the time, who are not familiar with these characters since they're not from the games. They're here because they too will be heading for the hidden city of the ancients. And you gotta have the most important meal of the day, don't you know? Well, almost everyone is going. Amy isn't technically a freedom fighter, well, not at this time anyway, and she wants to tag along. But everyone says she's too young. When she brings up Tails, Nate more or less points out what fans of this series are thinking. He is young, yes, but he also has experience facing dangerous threats. Amy leaves, clearly upset about this as indicated by the storm clouds over her head. We head over to the King and his son Elias watching the Freedom Fighters pack, and this is where that something from earlier pops up. Recently, Elias and the Queen were located and brought home. Currently, she's in a cryotube due to injuries sustained years ago. Thanks to being dependent on the cryotube for so long, if she was removed from it, she would die. Elias and the King know about this and don't want to inform Sally. She has enough to worry about involving finding the hidden city of the ancients. Elias suddenly has an idea to cure the Queen, a magic MacGuffin called the Ring of Acorns. How it works is, if one true of heart makes a wish, it'll come true. And so it begins. Sorry Elias, no curing of the Queen today. Amy's beaten you to the ring and has made her wish, ending this story. How would Amy know about the ring in the first place? Our second tie-in story begins with Knuckles at the Master Emerald Shrine reciting his opening dialogue from the game.
As far back as I can remember, I've been living here on this dark island, always guarding the Master Emerald from anything that could harm it. I don't know why I was given this job, why it was my fate. Destined to be here forever.
Soon he and the Emerald are attacked by a familiar water creature absorbing the latter. Knuckles is unable to stop it, and thus the island plunges into the water. As you can tell by the coloring and the fact that the Master Emerald is in a different location than what we'll see later, this is all a dream. He wakes up to find the nightmare has become reality. How did this happen? We switch over to Eggman as he monologues over the data he's discovered involving a creature known as Perfect Chaos. Its current location is inside a black emerald at the mysterious Cat Country. After some excavating, Eggman comes across said black emerald. Wanna know how Eggman frees Chaos? Whacking the black emerald with a hammer. Hey, it works as the emerald's cracked enough for Chaos to slip out. Though it's far from perfect, much to Eggman's disappointment. Chaos leads Eggman to a mural of its perfect form. Eggman figures out in order to restore Chaos, he needs 7 emeralds. And Eggman knows just where to get some. The floating island. He arrives via egg carrier and he's surprised to find an Echidna city present. for a moment. He then sees them as an obstacle in the way of his goal. Speaking of obstacles, there's a force field around the Chaos Chamber. So it seems the folks at Haven, a hidden group of Knuckles' ancestors, finally decide to take action. In the past, they've let Knuckles and company handle island affairs. Nice try, guys, but a mere force field isn't going to stop the Eggman. He finds a way through and blasts his way into the Chaos Chamber. So what to do about this big prize? Instead of taking the whole thing, he smashes it and takes off with the pieces. Yeah. He leaves the island to crash into the water. Smashing the Master Emerald did serve another purpose. It freed this individual trapped inside. Since he doesn't serve a role in this saga, I'll just say he's a recurring comic villain called Mammoth Mogul and move on. I'm going to reveal that I will be giving a final score to the entire Sonic Adventure arc at the end of issue 84. The way it's structured, as I'll point out as we go along, I feel like it's necessary. Don't worry, I'll still give my impressions on each story in an issue. With that said, the first story's merely set up. Sonic and Nate Morgan get word of Eggman's activities, which lead to the King sending the Freedom Fighters to locate the hidden city of the Ancients. Before Eggman does, the excavation in the Mystic Ruins. Is it to find the hidden city of the Ancients? Or is it to find the Black Emerald housing Chaos, as seen in Story 2? You decide. The Queen being in bad shape subplot is brought up only to introduce the Ring of Acorns and its wishing ability. I've gone into detail about this in my review of Sonic Super Special 15. Basically, I'm not a fan of using power rings as wishing MacGuffins. And as far as I know, this is the earliest indication, so I blame bowlers for establishing this idea. And to jump ahead a bit, this is how Amy will become her modern self, all because she's not experienced enough to join the Freedom Fighters on this mission. Looking back, I think it's a bit selfish on Amy's part, even though she is a kid. You know, I would accept the transformation easier if she were to use Nate's Super Emerald, like it was implied on the cover. The Emerald was partially responsible for Sonic's change, and maybe it could do the same to her. Anyway, for being the cover story, it's actually shorter than Story 2, which covers Knuckles and Eggman. I suspect the reason is that whole structure bit. Remember, the Knuckles comic ended just before the Sonic Adventure arc started. Had it not been, the Knuckles series would have taken on some of the Sonic Adventure arc. The biggest evidence is this cover for what would have been Knuckles 33. Looks kind of familiar, doesn't it? That's because it was later modified into Sonic issue 80's cover. That second story might have been intended for Knuckles 33, as it's more focused on Knuckles and the floating island. I'll get more into the restructuring when I talk about Sonic issue 80. For now, let's discuss the story itself. As I mentioned earlier, the beginning is a retelling of Knuckles' opening cutscene in Sonic Adventure. Except, instead of Chaos bursting out of the Master Emerald, it was absorbing it that caused the island to crash into the ocean. Well, the reason it crashed into the ocean for real was Eggman smashing the Emerald to pieces in order to feed Chaos. So, symbolism? Chaos being imprisoned inside the Black Emerald was necessary. The Master Emerald already had an occupant that was freed when broken. In fact, Mogul ended up inside the Emerald in the first place because he helped created it. Yeah, the Master Emerald was a recent creation at this point. Issue 56 depicts the event in question. This brings up a possible plot hole. Eggman learns from the mural that Chaos needs 7 emeralds to become perfect. He heads over to the one place he knows where he can nab some emeralds, and is surprised to find an Echidna City present. So far, things are reasonable. Eggman blaming out-of-date files for not knowing about the city makes sense. Robotnik died before it appeared on the island. In fact, the thing that caused Robotnik's death was responsible for the city's appearance. Long story. It's when Eggman comes face to face with the Master Emerald that the possible plot hole comes in. The story implies he treats the Master Emerald as it had always been there. If he had had gone by those out-of-date files, he would have known that the floating island had 2 regular Chaos Emeralds, at least until issue 56, instead of one big one. Maybe he had an energy scanner or something? Now why did Eggman break the emerald instead of taking the whole thing? You can say it's him being cruel, but the real reason is so Knuckles can hunt down the shards like his game counterpart. So far we're off to an okay start. The Archie Sonic comics have adopted games before, but they are loose adaptations. Here, while they had to change things to better fit this continuity, it's already a little closer to its game counterpart. We'll see how long that lasts as we head into issue 80 next time. See you then. Now we know why Eggman had a Whack-A-Hedgehog game on the Egg Carrier. He was training himself to crack that black emerald.